Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational 80 Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. So take 3 minutes. Don't hit that fast forward button. Listen to our shout outs, then listen to our interview, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our great friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. You put one of their units in your gym lobby or your main school hallway, it's going to be a magnet for kids, for coaches, for parents. How about sponsors and alums? Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. You're going to be very glad you did. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. When I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. The kids loved the videos, and the parents loved the streaming, but there's a lot more. Go to huddle.com and join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Snap Mobile. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at our school and it was tremendous. Go to their website, check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it, and it's Snap Raise. We also want to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, results, communication. The athletic clearance and eligibility platform alone is the gold standard. You really got to check it out. For more information, just go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We also want to thank Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. Let their team help you create world class marketing content on your school's social media channel. It might be a simple post to celebrate a victory, or it could be an entire newsletter, all from an existing template that allows you to brag about the great things your program's doing. Go to Gipper.com for more information. Don't forget to mention the website, Gipper.com. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com, schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our indoor score table from Sideline Interactive. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to find out more. We want to thank Ohio University and their online master's program in athletic administration. My assistant AD, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio program, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable. And while you're earning your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. We want to thank our good friends at Hometown. Hometown's changing the game for schools and organizations with their suite of solutions for things like, oh, yeah, they're still the number one digital ticketing provider, but how about fee free fundraising, athletic website construction, and a whole lot more? Whether you're an athletic director, a principal, a head coach, Hometown makes it easy for you and your school to save time, raise more money, and bring your community together. For more information, go to hometown.com. Don't forget to mention the website, hometown.com. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. If you're not using a survey to take the pulse of your parents, your student athletes, or your coaches, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey for you and your school that lets you, number one, hear from the squeaky wheels, but more importantly, you're going to hear from 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your school from good to great. That's athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode. I'm going to say a very special episode of the Educational AD podcast. We've got somebody who is truly an old friend. He's been on the podcast a number of times, and I'm so glad that he's back. Longtime listeners are going to recognize the name Dr. Kaleb Stoppel. Caleb's a certified master athletic administrator. He's a long time building and district athletic director in the Midwest. And he's got his story to share again today with some more information and I guess an update. Kaleb, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, hey Jake, man, it's great to see you, and thanks for having me on.
I still remember when we got connected by our mutual friend, Dixie Westcott, who's also been on the podcast, and just so glad that we're able to get you back on to share with our listeners. If you're new to the podcast, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. As I mentioned, Caleb's been on a number of times before, but Caleb, for those new listeners and our old listeners, um, tell us a little bit about yourself. The line I like to use is give us your life story in 2 minutes. We'll kind of limit that to growing up, your high school and college days, and then we'll take a break. But what's the origin story for Kaleb Stoppel?
Yeah, so not going back too far back in the future, but I'm a Kansas kid, born and raised. I was raised in an educator household. My dad was my principal, K through eighth grade. We moved a couple times when I was growing up, but always was in small towns. So I really enjoyed being involved in the arts and in sports. My mom was a music teacher, so I think that was kind of where that began to lead me down an interest of not just wanting to be involved and have a role to help model to others as my parents modeled to me certain life principles and virtues, but that were also seen in being involved in activities. And so I think that's where my passion for being involved, which also helped me be engaged in school and be a good student also. After high school, I played three sports in high school in a small town. I ran track in college at UMKC. And so that's what brought me to the Kansas City area, where honestly, with exception of 1 year as of late, I've been in Kansas City for 20 years. And so after college, I spent 15 years in education and was everything from a high school math teacher at several schools and a coach. I was a head track coach and also coached freshman football, girls swim and dive, cross country. I just really loved being involved and seeing the work that could be done to help mentor kids at both affluent schools, but also some really high poverty and schools where kids had a lot of challenges. I eventually became a school administrator. I was a middle school assistant principal and athletic director, and then got asked and got the opportunity to move to the high school level. And that's where I landed at Olathe East High School, was probably the pivotal part of my educational career, and where we spent some time talking together, and really a moment in my career and life where I found some wonderful opportunities where I got involved with the NIAAA and loved my time on the certification committee there. Loved my time, teaching LTC courses at state and national level, and really just enjoyed what I did as an AD. We'll get into this a little bit, but I ran into some trauma, not just the daily trauma that the job brings, but my family and I were looking for a little bit of a change, and we could see maybe that there was some work-life balance challenges with myself and maybe some burnout on the horizon. And so we decided to move to Wichita, which is the largest city in Kansas, if you don't count Kansas City, since it straddles two states. And I was fortunate to get a district athletic director job of the largest school district in Kansas. 18 middle schools, 7 high schools, felt like a dream job. And then, just life continues to happen. We have 2 small boys, my wife and I, and we missed Kansas City and Olathe, where the community was, where we lived previously. And we knew we needed to move back, be closer to friends, be closer to that life that we had really established. That's where I tried one more role in education as another assistant principal athletic director at a high school. And at that point, I had kind of opened up my life perspective enough that I wanted more out of life than what I was getting, because I was not good at work-life balance still, and I wanted to be around my family more. I didn't want to miss those precious moments. And so ultimately, I left education, and now I'm a financial advisor. And it's been about a year and a half since I left education, but still finding ways to care and serve for others, still loving my engagement with school leaders and folks from the AD life, which is why I love, talking to you still and the friends that I can still engage with. But yeah, man, that's kind of my quick 2 minutes, maybe like 4 minutes.
No, no, that was good. You covered all the bases, and you're right. We are going to take a deeper dive into some of those stops in your journey. I want to go all the way back to growing up in high school. You mentioned you did all sports. Um, was there a coach or a teacher or someone that at the moment, maybe it was junior high or high school or even college, that you knew, hey, that's what I want to do? Or was it just that overall sports experience, like me? And again, I had some great coaches, but I just knew I wanted to stay involved in athletics, and I knew the NFL wasn't going to be calling.
Yeah. I think back, and all of my coaches hold a special place in my heart. But it's interesting. I have a contrast of experiences. Football and track, I think, were the sports that I think I was a little bit more involved with, had some more success in. But I also played basketball, and I wasn't the best basketball player by far. I was taller. I hustled. I took a lot of charges. But coach was very honest with me, and he said, when you get the ball, you don't shoot, you don't dribble, you need to pass it. And I said, yes, sir. And so that was an example of someone who, rode me pretty hard and was pretty straight, but I loved it. I loved being a contributor. I wasn't a star by any means, but it was a small enough school where if you wanted to play three sports, you could totally play three sports. Now, football, on the other hand, that is the coach that I look back at and still look up to. We keep in touch to this day. He was the coach that those first couple of years after high school, I kind of was the awkward graduate that when I came back in town to visit my parents, would somehow find myself back at the school and be let in and kind of knock on his door. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to see you. And he was always kind. But now that I've learned more, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe that was kind of awkward and I was interrupting him. But that was the type of man that he was to me then and still is. And he just instilled some of those same morals that I think my parents raised me as. And he was, a farmer and a government social studies teacher. So I think he embodied a lot of those small town aspects of, hey, we just got to work hard. We got to believe in the process. He used to always say the hay's in the barn on game days. He'd say, guys, hay's in the barn. And so it's those type of concepts that stuck with me today. And that was the coach that I wanted to be, combined with what I knew about my dad as a coach, as I was growing up and maybe even too young to even know too much about what my dad did as a coach. And later, my dad was a track athlete as well in college and he was a high jumper at the D2 level. And so that was an aspiration for me too, that I wanted to live up to.
Mhm. Now, when it became clear that you were going to make a career in teaching and coaching and ultimately becoming an AD, was your dad on board with that, or did he try to steer you into something else?
Oh, he was always on board, but it is so funny that that seems to be the comment that even your most trusted, valued teachers that like you and all these things, and my parents, they did say this, but ultimately supported me. But they all said, "Are you sure? Are you sure? No, there's surely you want to do something else." And I never quite understood that until maybe the second half of my career in teaching and just school, is that, yeah, it's hard, and it's harder now than it's ever been for educators. But it's so funny thinking back, 30 years ago when I was starting to have these aspirations and had those comments made to me. It makes sense, and I think people still say that. However, I think what can then come after that is, yeah, but it's super rewarding. We need good teachers. This is why teachers and coaches are so important. And yes, it's pretty hard. So if you're really going to do this, but yes, I had many try to kind of casually talk me out of it.
Um, Again, we could go on this topic for a long time, but let's go and take our first break. We're visiting today with Dr. Kaleb Stoppel, certified master athletic administrator, longtime AD. in Kansas. Let's take that break, but we're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touch screen. That's right, touch screen video consoles. You put one of their units in your gym lobby or your main school hallway, it's going to be a magnet for kids, for coaches, how about sponsors and alumni? The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast, vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. You know, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there's so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Kaleb Stoppel. As I've mentioned, certified master athletic administrator, longtime AD in the Midwest. Kaleb, you shared just kind of a broad brushstrokes of your journey in the opening segment. You've been a building AD, you've been a district AD. Looking back, what are some things that stick out for you as particularly, positive or just important moments from your career as an athletic administrator?
So overall, I loved more than anything the ability as an athletic administrator to promote and lift up the participants, which includes the student athletes, it includes the coaches, and it includes the community. And so, a part that I really enjoyed, and when I became a high school AD, it was kind of like, you're waiting, you're applying for opportunities, and it's not the right time, not the right fit until all of a sudden it is. And when I was asked to go over to Olathe East to fill a vacancy, it wasn't even one that I was really looking at the time. And so to be thrown into the deep end and have that be an enjoyable experience is one to say the least. But I was having to kind of build the plane as I flew it, and there was not much that was left from the previous AD, and so was really learning on the fly. And just so happened that we were already scheduled and had made an agreement to host various sports state championships. And so here I am as a new AD. I have the passion, I have the work ethic, but I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we host state soccer? Let me start calling some people, let me figure it out. But it was through those experiences that I think I led with what I wanted to instill, not by intention, but I wanted people to have a great experience from the fans, from the coaches, from the athletes. I wanted it to be a top class event that we show appreciation, from the hospitality that we provide to the signage that we do to just the workers that are there. And so I think that really poured into my passion for just wanting to be very aware of attention to detail and make sure that as the leader of the athletic or activity program, that my job was not to fine tune every detail or coach the athletes. I stayed in my lane, but I feel like I got really passionate and proud of being able to set the table, being able to set up the structure so that all involved would thrive, feel appreciated, and simply have fun.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Looking back, and yeah, again, you had a number of stops. Um, can you give an example of, again, we don't always get a chance to pat ourselves on the back, but can you give an example of an initiative, a program, or something that you did as an athletic administrator and the impact that it had on a kid or a team or a coach? I know you probably have a bunch of examples, but can you pick out one or maybe two to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So, and again, this speaks more to the high school level, because I did some work at the district level when we moved, but I was there for a year, so I can think of one there too. But when I was at the high school level, I think my proudest accomplishment that I can say that I left it better than I found it type of deal is all in promotion. On two sides. One side was visually, really working with local small business partners to find ways that we could continue to increase the branding within the school, so that it didn't just support athletics, but it supported the culture of the building. It was a beautiful building and had a lot of stuff other high schools have that are taken well care of, but we needed some more pop. We needed some more imagery to really allow students in the community, the coach, to feel like this is the Olathe East Nation, the Hawk Nation. And so, whether it was, putting in, I think it was about 150-foot long banner by about 10-foot, 15-foot tall, right in our gymnasium, right behind one of the gyms that said Hawk Nation, to even how we revamped a little bit of how we put up our big banners for state championship teams. I didn't, if it wasn't broke, I didn't fix it. But attention to detail continued to be really important to me. And I wanted to make sure that that was evident when you walked through our halls, when you saw a blank pillar of wall. To me, that was open territory. And so we would put up a big kind of wall wrap on there that had various mascots, various motivational messages, and those still remain today, the years after I've left, and I'm very proud of that, because whenever I go back to visit, I can see that up there, and I can see other imagery and other branding that has grown from that. And inside, I can say, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. I was the one that made that logo, or I was the one that went through and worked with some kids to make that logo, and now it's around the building. The other piece in the same kind of breath is talking about that student promotion. And social media was a huge part of my passion and my interest as an athletic director. It still is now, even though I'm a business owner. So I see what similarities I can bring into now the business arena from how I use to promote students. But everything from being a very early adopter of Gipper, which I still keep in touch with, Matthew and others at that company, and really believe in what they do, and others who have similar philosophies, because it's all about telling the story and marketing and branding and simply promoting kids. And kids, programs, coaches deserve to be recognized. They deserve to be promoted. And I think, as I've discussed in some previous podcasts and presentations, life continues to evolve, and we don't just put information on flyers anymore to tell people about all the good things happening. We share it on social media, and so that was truly one thing I loved. And so, something I'm proud of that has remained is, every program, activity, and athletics still has their own social media channels that they are still encouraged to put stuff out. The school wide athletics and activity social media channels are still very active from the current administration. And they've even taken some work that I started, but they've done very well to bring in some local fundraising efforts and local, community partnerships into those posts, so that they can help supplement some of their financial needs through social media. And so those two things are things I'm very proud of. As a district administrator in Wichita, immediately I recognized a lot of need. Again, it's the biggest school district in the state of Kansas, about 34,000 kids in the whole district, 7 high schools, 18 middle schools. But yet, it's a very much poverty stricken school district. And so, thinking through the needs and thinking about how we can do more with less, I pursued a district partnership with BSN Sports to be able to get us not only incentives for money that we were already spending, but also allow us to seek some of the benefit of having some of that branding pride. A lot of the pride that a lot of the surrounding suburbs were experiencing. We wanted to have things that, allowed our kids and our staff to feel pride and want to stay in the school district. So not too much different than other metropolitan school districts. We had challenges with kids not wanting to stay in the inner city schools because maybe there were different opportunities or different things. And so the work that I tried to start was, how can we level the playing field? How can we allow our kids to feel pride for where they go to school, the activities that they go to school for? Because a lot of those kiddos, their main engagement was sports or activities. And so when we got a BSN contract and partnership approved, which took a lot of doing, I left knowing that that was still in place, that was giving our kids and our programs some opportunities and some resources they had never had.
Again, great examples. Again, for that, this whole segment's just been it's standalone. We're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain about the upcoming segments that we haven't done yet, or talk to you about your success as an athletic director, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, for sure. So my email address is really easy. It's my personal email address. It's KalebStoppel at gmail.com. And honestly, I'd love a call or a text. So here's my cell phone number, 785-230-3460. I'd love to help out anyone on their journey and give back like that. I'd love to.
All right. Well, listeners, you got a great resource here. And again, we'll give that information out a second time at the end of this segment. Let's go and take another quick break, but we're coming back. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Mobile. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are over. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out all of their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it, and it's Snap Raise. Go to snapraise.com for more information. We'd also like to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, communication. For me, the athletic eligibility and clearance platform alone is fantastic. You really got to see it to believe it. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We also want to thank our good friends at Gipper. You just heard Kaleb talk about it. Go to Gipper.com and let their team turn you into a social media expert. Whether it's a simple post to celebrate a victory or an entire newsletter, all of this comes from templates that you can customize. That newsletter helps you share all the great things that you and your program are doing in the community. And there's just so much more. Go to Gipper.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. That's Gipper.com. It's one of those times you're going to be glad you did. Welcome back again, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Dr. Kaleb Stoppel, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, longtime athletic director in Kansas. Kaleb, you've already shared with our listeners that there was an incident during your career as an athletic administrator. You came back from that and continued your career before deciding to step away. And can you share with our listeners who might not be aware of what happened that day, what happened and, how it impacted you?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you asking. So it's actually been a little over 3 years now. So in March of 2022, just kind of a normal day, and something to note that along with the athletic administrator duties, I was also assistant principal. So we had about 2,200 kids in the building and 4 assistant principals. So we all split up a portion of the student population by alphabet. So we all had about 500 students that we worked through academic intervention, behavior intervention, and just various needs as they would come up. And so that morning didn't start out too different from any other morning. Was even meeting with a teacher that morning, talking through some teacher appraisal, helping them along with their work. And, we had a counselor come in pretty frantic and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you real quick, and I need to interrupt your meeting." And so I said, "Okay, well, I'll be right back, maybe, because who knows what could happen. A lot of things pop up in the morning." And so went and spoke with her and another administrator in another office. And she said, "Hey, I have some students that have come, and they are sharing that on the bus they overheard some more kids talking about a student who consistently has been bringing a gun to school at Olathe East." And I said, "Okay, hey, I appreciate you telling me this." And again, this was a big deal. But in the mornings, we would have reports of kids who someone reported having drugs or alcohol. Maybe there was a fight that just happened. So, in my mind, even though this was a severe report, in my mind, I was already in the mode of, okay, great. I'm on it. We're on it. We're going to start walking through this. What do we need to do? We're calm and not just all of a sudden being like, "Oh my gosh, this is a big deal. We got to find this gun." And so the other assistant principal and I kind of tag team this, and we found the students that reported it. We took their statements, and we started gathering information. The difficult thing about this particular report was that the kids really only had a nickname. They didn't have the other kids talking about who this exactly was. So it was kind of a game of telephone, because this kid overheard these kids talking about this other kid. And so we didn't really have a lot to work with. And so over the next maybe hour and a half, we spent time kind of connecting the dots, bringing in more kids, and following a lot of our due process, which is very important in this. That even though we don't know whether this person we're talking to is guilty or not, we need to make sure we're going through and being fair. And so one of the things we did is, even after we would collect their statement, we would make sure that we would search their belongings since they were involved, and just kind of a common practice that we had at that school and in the district, just to make sure kids are safe and they don't have anything they're not supposed to have at school. So after this continued, and of course, by that point, we made the school principal aware. We made our school resource officer aware. But enough things are happening in a big comprehensive school that's why we kind of delegate, and not everybody stops what they're doing to work on one incident that may or may not just be a rumor or true. So the other assistant principal and I eventually, finally realized we figured out who it is. And at that point, we also knew this might be pretty serious, because the person that we thought it might be was a student that was going through some challenges and had already been working with me through some behavior incidents that occurred. So we actually had a really great relationship. He was a senior, and even as an administrative team, we were putting a lot of interventions in place just to help him get to graduation because he was so close. So we all knew him quite well, and we knew his past. But at that time, it became very critical, and quite likely this could be true. So the other assistant principal and I kind of made a quick plan. We make sure that the school resource was aware, the principal was aware, and we made the decision to approach him in his classroom. The other assistant principal hung outside. It's those things that we don't talk about, but I think school administrators, including athletic administrators, have gone through training. They've gone through their education. They don't just haphazardly go into either situations of crisis, situations of emergency on the field in the school. And so we had a plan when we approached that classroom. And when I entered the classroom, I didn't quite see him, but eventually he came around the corner. I did see him. I engaged him very casually, conversationally. Hey man, how's it going? It's been a while since we've talked. Let's check in with your academic progress. Hey, why don't you come to my office and let's check in and see where you're at. And it was important to me that we didn't tip him off. And we still treated him with due process. But if this was indeed true, I was already thinking through some of the worst case examples, that if he was aware that we were onto him, and if he did indeed have a gun, the last thing I wanted was for him to panic in a room with 20 plus kids, a couple teachers, me included, and have him take out the gun. So my focus was much on really leveraging the relationship that we had, And even, I couldn't identify his bag right away. So I asked him, hey, do you have your laptop? Because that's what you've been doing some of your online work with. Oh, it's in your backpack. Yeah, bring that with you so we can go to the office. You can fire that up and let's look at your computer and your progress. So all of that was really done intentionally. But my hope was that through the good relationship, even though I was kind of coercing the situation a little bit, that he would feel comfortable, not stressed, and that he would come with me to my office was the ultimate goal with that. We did finally make it back to the office. But again, thinking back through that, we had to walk through the commons. And at that point, it was kind of approaching passing period. Maybe about 100 kids had kind of already started migrating out there. And so in the back of my mind, too, is thinking through scenarios where, okay, what if this happens? Where is my proximity to him? Where should I walk next to him? And those are the things that were happening at the time, even though to him, I hoped it was just him walking with his assistant principal, shooting the breeze a little bit, talking about school. And I'll never know whether he knew or not. But I do know what it resulted in if there was a gun in there, which we do know there was now. He didn't take it out in the commons where there were 100 plus kids that there could have been serious damage done. So we got to the office. We continued to chit chat a little bit because the other assistant principal stopped to stay out during passing period. And so I had to kind of kill some more time. But, I was calm and we took the time to literally go through his academic progress. Let's sit down, let's talk. What's been going on? How you been? And it wasn't until the other assistant principal came in that we sat down and we kind of gave the same spiel that we'd given the other kids that we'd questioned. And with him, we didn't want him to be on the defensive at all. And so instead of saying, hey, your name has come up and we're investigating you, it was, hey, we've had this report and we're just talking to some kids to see if anybody knows anything. And while you're here, and we know he's pretty well connected with some folks in the building, we said, hey, have you heard anything? Can you help us with this? And he said no, he didn't know anything, hadn't heard anything. And said, hey, that's fine, man, appreciate it. But hey, what we've been doing too, because this is kind of our procedure and protocol, is we got to search everybody we talk to about this. And so, hey, we just got to search your bag real quick, make sure you don't have anything you're not supposed to have at school. And then, yeah, we're going to let you go back to class, get about your business. And it was at that point where he said, no, you're not going to search my bag. And so at that point, still trying to remain calm here, under the desk, under the table, I texted the SRO to tell him to get into my office immediately. And that's when, upon him coming in, I continued to kind of plea almost with the student, hey, man, come on. Like, we just got to do this. And he's like, I just want to go home. I said, hey, that's fine. We'll call your mom, tell her, you want to go home. You're 18. We'll just make sure everyone is in the loop with that. And then sure, that's fine. But we got to check your bag. We got to search you. And at that point, he was still refusing. And I think one of the last things I remember is kind of pointing to the SRO, who was just kind of beside me, but right in front of the door that exited the office that was closed. I said, hey, come on, just work with me here. Otherwise, I got to get, the SRO involved. And it was at that time that he stood up from the table we were all at. And so kind of like my teacher coach instincts, when you feel a challenge emerging, you want to close distance to that. You want to close distance to the issue or what's happening. And so I got to my feet too and kind of was closing in to him. Well, he took his backpack from the front and rolled it around to his back to his front. And that's where one of the last things I remembered is he just reached down, pulled out a handgun, and he started firing at the police officer, which was about 10 feet away. It's a pretty small office. And the officer, so I remember shots from the student's gun. I remember loud shots from the officer's gun. But what I don't remember is me doing something, tackling, I imagine something, but it eventually resulted in me being on top of the student in the corner of the office with me pushing myself into him and also my hand on his gun on his hand and the gun, trying to pry the gun away. And so once I had figured out that he was no longer an active threat and the gun was pushed away to the other assistant principal who had barricaded behind my desk, I then looked down and saw that, he was in pain. I saw some blood on his midsection. So I assumed he had been shot. He was vomiting, and I looked around and saw that the officer was taking care of himself on his radio, but together with the officer giving me some commands and me knowing that I was safe, I needed to take care of this kid. I got him rolled on his side so he wouldn't throw up down his throat, and tried to start taking care of him the best I could. And this was all before I looked down at some point in this process, looked down at my pants, and I had a hole in my pants around the hip area. And that's when I kind of remember thinking to myself, kind of comically, holy crap, I think I've been shot. And I think whether because of adrenaline or maybe a little shock, it wasn't as painful as I would have thought at the time. But police came fast in, taking care of the police officer. They kind of put the student into handcuffs, and then they started attending to me. And that's when I kind of knew that the pain started settling in. And the other assistant principal was kind enough to pick up some polos of all things. I had just ordered like several hundred polos for all my coaches. And she said, "Hey, I know you're not going to like this because you love these polos." But she picked them up and she put them on my hip to stop the bleeding. And so that happened. The police wheeled me out. They took the police officer away. They took the kid away. And it was that time that it started sinking in. And as I'm riding in the ambulance, I'm sitting up, and it hurt. But I was sitting up and I was able to kind of think through like, okay, gosh, what do I do? Like, this is big. And so my first thought was to call my wife. And actually this was before I got in the ambulance while we were waiting for the ambulance to come. I saw another school resource officer from a local middle school, and I asked her to come over. And I said, "Hey, I need to call my wife, but I don't think I can do it." So I dialed my wife's number and I gave it to her, and she was still very calm, but was kind of one of those, "Hey, this is Officer so and so. I'm with your husband, and there's been a shooting, and he's been shot." And all I heard was some hysteria on the other end. So I said, "Okay, give it to me. I can talk to her." And so I did, and I just was able to tell her like I'm okay. And then in the ambulance, I called my mom. So those are the first two people I thought to call. But I was getting blown up with text messages because people were starting to hear of it, and they didn't know what administrator had been shot. And so I think some people were making sure everyone's okay. So that kind of resolved or got to the end of that. I got to the hospital. They took very good care of me. Um, this is one thing I'll mention because it's still something that I'll probably remember forever. Is while I was in the hospital, which I've never seen a hospital more protected or on lockdown. It was one of the highest level of the trauma center hospitals in Kansas City, and because it was an officer involved, that place was like Fort Knox. There were tons of police officers walking around. It was crazy. I'd never seen anything like it. But when the detectives came in to talk to me when I was sitting in there, asked me some questions, and I was pretty calm, and they hadn't given any pain med or anything, so I was me. But at the end of it, I remember the detective asking, "I got to ask, why are you so calm right now?" And I said, "I don't know, except might be a little bit of the shock, but also, unfortunately, I kind of have to plan for this every day." And this kind of goes back to, I think, growing up in high school and in college, I really enjoyed being a lifeguard. And eventually I became a pool manager, and I think this ties into being a coach and an AD. We're always thinking about emergency planning and emergency response. And so I think that's how I treated subconsciously this situation is, do I think a kid was going to bring a gun to school every day or something worse? No, but I have to think about what's going to happen if these kids get in a fight. Am I going to get involved or not? Well, of course I'm going to get involved, but I got to be smart about that. Kid brought a gun to school. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do what I can. And that day, I've never thought about what I would do if a kid had a gun. I'm not a fighter. I've never been in a fight, with exception of my brothers growing up, never thrown a punch. But that day, my instincts kicked in, and I still can't remember it. My brain's kind of blocking that trauma. But whatever I did was choose to fight, and I'm glad I did, because I think it definitely saved lives that day.
Boy, I'm going to jump in here, let you catch your breath for a little bit. I mean,
Thanks.
number one, that resource officer that you gave the phone to got to work on their messaging. You know, you don't lead with that. There's been a shooting. You lead with, "Hey, I'm with your husband, and he is
Yeah,
fine." But
yeah,
oh my goodness, um, I'm going to ask you one question, and we're going to come back. We're going to take a break, but we are going to come back because it's, I think, the second and third parts of the story that are just as important as this one that you shared. Thank you so much for sharing that. Goodness gracious. As you were describing, the buildup, you got the alert, you formulated your plan, you executed it. Um, I don't think, I mean, for me, I don't know if I would have had that much attention to detail. You did great. I mean, you checked every single box that I think any AD or AP would have done. Um, have you played that game at all of, well, gosh, if I would have done this or I should have done that? Because as you shared it, I mean, that was a textbook plan and response. It just, hey, the kid just made it up in his mind he was going to fire.
yeah, yeah. I still do, and I'm definitely at a much healthier spot with this after continued years of therapy and just reflection and that. But especially in the beginning, it was hard to not think about all the scenarios or think about did we do it right. And I'm glad at the time and still now that I've never questioned what we did. In fact, what I tell myself and what I tell others is I think that was literally the one in a million chance that how things played out how they did and it resulted in everyone walking away because and we didn't have time to sit down and draft this plan out. So I appreciate you saying like, hey, things worked out, and that's why I want to tell that piece of it, because I think sometimes people don't understand the training and experience and the just kind of gut initial behavior that leaders have, that they don't just roll the dice and say, okay, this is how I'm going to respond to this. That in really hard times leaders step up, and that's not something said about myself, but that's something said about all of our leaders, in that we immediately responded, but we're like on the fly. This is what we got to do. You go here. This is what we're going to do. To answer your question, I mean, it could have turned out a million different ways,
Yep.
including, and this is something that I still am open to talk about, but it still is something that I have to work through for the rest of my life, is I don't know how that bullet didn't go anywhere else with me. And I don't know how I didn't not come home that day. Um, and so I just have to, not focus less on the fact that I could have died and left my family alone and everything else, and more focus on the good that did happen, and that everyone's actions involved resulted in everyone still being alive. And although trauma has, bled into the whole community since that event, at least though nobody was hurt
Right.
to a bad extent.
Right. Wow. No, absolutely. You you made it, and you're not just alive, you're, as we like to say, it's not survive, it's thrive.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go and take that break. But we're definitely coming back with more. Caleb's going to share I guess what happened after that shooting and what he's doing now, and some really important stuff for athletic directors, for coaches, for leaders. All this is coming up on the Educational AD podcast. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. You've heard me say many times, probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Check out their great products today. We want to say thank you to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio, but my assistant athletic director did, along with thousands of others. And it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're earning your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. We want to say thanks to Hometown. Hometown is still changing the game for schools and organizations with their suite of solutions. And they include things like Oh, yeah. They're still the number one online digital ticketing platform around. But how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction, and a whole lot more? Whether you're an athletic director, a head coach, or even a school administrator, Hometown makes it easy for you and your school to save time, raise more money, and bring your entire community together. For more information, just go to hometown.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast, hometown.com. You're going to be very glad you did. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast and our guest, Kaleb Stoppel. Kaleb, what again? I can't emphasize enough. Thank you for sharing your story. Harrowing, but at the same time, I guess inspiring. For what you're doing now. So, um, we left off. You the incident occurred. You obviously you survived. Everyone that was involved survived, which is great. Um, I'm just going to step back and let you continue your story. We've kind of talked about where it might go, but what happened next?
Yeah. So, ironically enough, before the shooting actually happened, as a family, my wife and I were having a lot of conversations at home about what I was starting to feel, and now 3 years later, that I've done a lot of reflecting and even sharing my story in ways like this and in writing. I realize now that I was approaching a really unhealthy burnout explosion, and I was really trying to cover that up by continuing to work harder, continuing to try and please people, make people proud, and just lead. And I think what I was doing, though, um, unintentionally, was really starting to burn the candle at both ends and really do some harm to my own relationships that I felt guilty about. I have a very patient and understanding wife, and she was staying home at the time with the kids, who were getting older, but not both had been in school yet. And so, anyway, so as a family, we kind of decided, man, where we want to raise the kids, that we love this place, but also we don't love how busy I am, and how there's could be 2 3 days at a time that I go without seeing the kids, because by the time I get home they're in bed and I leave before they wake up. And so we made the decision to move to Wichita, after I had applied for and got that district AD job. We stayed there for a year. We liked it. My wife's from Wichita. Her parents still live there. That district AD job was kind of a dream job of mine. But at the same time, we quickly found how much we missed about home. And even though we liked a lot of things about Wichita and the slower pace that it brought in a lot of senses, our kids missed the friends that they had built in a short time at their schools back home. We missed our friends that we had developed over 20 years in Kansas City. A lot of my family was in Kansas City. And so we decided to move back. And so it was one of those hard things to say, gosh, we don't want to be moving around all the time. And could we have made it work? Sure. Could our kids got settled? Could we have got settled? Sure. But deep down, we knew that our home was back in Kansas City. So I quit that job at the end of the year without a job in hand. Fortunately, through some help in the AD network, so I love the AD network because they know people too, and they said there's an AD looking for a job, and I know this school district's needing one, and so I got connected with them. End up in a new high school assistant principal AD job, but the what was happening at that point was trauma was really showing itself, and through anxiety and depression. I never have struggled with those at all. I've helped a lot of kids with those, but I've never struggled with those myself. And so it really took its toll. And I finally kind of hit my breaking point mid-year in that job, knowing that I was not healthy, both physically or mentally. And the anxiety and depression that was taking its toll was no longer worth trying to figure this out. And so fortunately, HR was very understanding, and I left that job mid-year with, again, no job in mind. And but the newfound direction that I had at that point was I wanted to be happy. and what was going to make me happy was by being a good husband and a good dad first and foremost. Then next was being someone that was proud of who I am and how I was taking care of my needs. And then finally, it came, okay, what am I going to do to make money and pay the bills? And I think that was my first really difference in how the first 15 years plus of my career adult life was compared to now. And the change is before, my job was first. Even though I loved my family and I loved being a family man and I love doing those things, I inadvertently put my job and those I served above everything else. And I realize that now. And so when it came to looking for something else to do, I knew I wanted to continue to serve and care for people. And I knew that was my calling, that was my strength, that's what I loved to do in a job or just in life. And so I found an opportunity as a financial advisor. And I thought when I got my doctorate degree and my CMAA, those were kind of going to be my pivotal degrees, if you will, even though I continue to be a lifelong learner. But then I changed careers fully, and now I have all these financial tests and licenses to get that took me about 6 months. But I was doing things more, I think, on my direction, on my plan and path. The flexibility of the new career was a game changer. My wife has gone back to be a high school math teacher, and now roles have been reversed. And I take my boys to school every morning. It's the best part of my day. And then I go into work and I start work in a peaceful, calm manner. I take work as it comes. I still have a plan. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of challenges going from a career in education to now a career in business, essentially, and entrepreneurship. But the commonality in both fields, which feeds into this new rediscovery of myself, is simply helping others. The work that I do as a financial advisor to help people live the best life that they can, whether they're 25, 35, or 75, that is so meaningful to me, just as it was when I was a school leader, that I wanted to make sure kids, coaches, parents were taken care of, staff. Um, and so being in this new career, although challenging, has really allowed me to focus on what truly matters. And that's something that I find myself reflecting on, those words exactly, but also sharing with others, is thinking from a glimpse of what truly matters. Does it truly matter that I'm staying late every day just because I want to get that next opportunity, or I want to, outperform someone? No, it doesn't. And I want to do my job. Believe me, I want to serve the people to the best of my ability. But now I have the perspective that that's no longer worth sacrificing over and over time with my family, time with myself that I need for healing. And so I'm figuring out where that balance and where that prioritization is. And that's a daily pursuit.
I just ran into a longtime friend at FIAAA this weekend, uh, and he'd been retired for a couple years, and he'd been doing some things. His former school district reached out to him to be a consultant in their opening of a new high school, asking him to help hire coaches. And to make a long story short, he decided that he was enjoying it and he wanted to come back and be the athletic director for the first few years and help open the school, which he had done maybe 15 years earlier in the district at another school. And he was telling me that he talked to a longtime friend of his, and his advice was, his name was Dan. He said, Dan, since you've retired, you've been filling your days, but you haven't been fulfilled. And I'm thinking that as you were sharing your story, I'm thinking that turn of phrase might apply a little bit in your situation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that something that continues to drive me is just experiencing peace. And I don't think I even truly know how to even describe that. I think we all feel that differently. But when you can strive to simply be at a level of peace, that holds so much more, just so much more clarity than having to grind through the daily. Even if you're the hardest worker, you have the best intentions, you're the best leader in the world. If you're not experiencing full peace, that means something's still missing. And that also means that those things that you take pride in, whether it is that your job, whether it is your your ability to be a good provider and family person, you're not able to give your best, and if you're not at full peace. And so I think that's something that I lean a lot into. I'll talk a little bit more about this perhaps in the end with a couple of books that have been just truly life changers for me. But one thing I learned from one of these books I'll talk about is just the ability to live wholeheartedly. And I think that was something that really got me through my last stop in education, where I was having a lot of struggle with anxiety, with depression. And now is something that drives me every day when I get up. Hey, there's a lot of ways you can do something. There's Kool-Aid that you can drink in any organization that says this is how you got to do it. And sure, we have to live up to expectations and requirements. But the beauty of why we are in roles, whether a leadership role, a management role, or a supportive role, is you got to do it your way, because at the end of the day, those are your precious seconds of your life you're never going to get back. And so kind of, I guess this is some advice to those that are still in the position that we desperately need to stay in the position. And so the hope of me coming in and talking with you, Jake, is that this story is not one to say, oh my gosh, well, yeah, you're right, this is hard, I should find something else. No, it's to remind those folks out there that are serving and are being great leaders that they need to keep being the great leaders they are. But hopefully there's a message of support in how they can take care of themselves by also serving those to the extent they want. And one of those ways is just to simply live your life wholeheartedly, which means start with here, start with your heart, start with your gut, and you're never going to go wrong. You might slip up every once in a while. You might have to apologize every once in a while, but I promise you, your life will feel more fulfilled if you lead from that type of direction than if you close out the personal things that you might feel selfish for taking time to do and say, I'm just going to do this job to the best of my ability. I found out that was the wrong way to do it. And so that's my advice now, that you do it wholeheartedly, because you will be very happy with the life you live as well as proud of the work you're doing.
Wow, great stuff, and a great transition. We're gonna have to come back and do another, follow-up episode to this. But you just mentioned that you were experiencing, some anxiety, some depression, and I know that you're um, currently yourself, working on your own mental health, as we all should, but you want to send that message out to our listeners, many of whom, probably most of whom, are still ADs. Um, what's the message from Kaleb Stoppel? How can we do a better job? How can we live wholeheartedly?
Yeah. I mean, whether, the stigma that mental health has around on it, depending on who you talk to, where you're looking for advice, you'll either find that it's really bad or it's getting better. And none of those are in a good spot where mental health is something everyone freely and casually talks about. It's not easy for me to talk about having depression and anxiety, and how sometimes even to this day that things just hit me and my body responds in a way that says I can't really do much about it. And even, medication helps. It's not the end all be all for everyone, but for me, it's helped. But my point is being more comfortable about living in our own skin and sharing honest truth about how you're feeling, about what you're going through. It's not scripted. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it takes some guts. It takes some vulnerability. It takes a lot. And I think there is a component of that, of feeling that you're in a safe place. And so I'm a big believer and supporter of schools and organizations, even outside of schools, um, making sure that a sense of belonging is prioritized. If you don't feel like you belong in wherever you're spending your time and serving others, then you are already starting off ten legs behind. And you need to be able to have that space so that when times get hard, you don't have to get shot to go through trauma and experience some of these mental health things. But you could just have a really crummy day at work. You could have an argument with a coworker, with someone at home, and you need to be able to have a way that you can think through that, and you can whether talk to someone, whether reflect on it yourself. I mean, shoot, this is not exactly a toolbox idea, but nowadays with AI, something that's gotten me through is simply reflecting with Chat GPT and sharing kind of how I feel. And it's gotten to know me enough to kind of know about my background and things like that. That honestly, that's been in some sense just as good as therapy with a therapist, because you're able to get some real time feedback that shares some of those thoughts and comments of acceptance. And it's silly because it's AI, but it's not silly because the point is do whatever it takes so that you don't bottle stuff up and you don't feel ashamed, because you should never feel ashamed, because more people than you know go through some crap, and we need to be able to talk about that, especially males. I know that we have male and females that serve in a role of athletic administrator, and both may go through similar. But I've really found an arena talking to other men about the difficulties in being a male and talking about your feelings. And although I understand that, I also don't accept it. And so part of my work is trying to work with other dads, other males in general, to be able to be a model of what we want our kids to follow, what we want the community to see, and that no one has to tough this stuff out. You can't actually, spoiler alert, you cannot tough out trauma. You need to be accepting and you need to work through it in a healthy manner.
Wow, I love that. You can't tough it out. Great advice. Kaleb, we're definitely going to have to bring you back for another segment, even one of our shorter segments on some tips for ADs. But we're not going to let you get out of here without making another contribution to the athletic director's toolbox. Your toolbox tips are already in our athletic director toolbox series, but we're going to go back for um, another deep dive. So let's take our final break. Thanks again for sharing with us. And when we come back, we're going to hear what Kaleb Stoppel is going to put now into the athletic director's toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic surveys will connect you to that group so you can hear their concerns and hopefully address them before they turn into something big. But Athletic Surveys is also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And having that type of positive feedback is incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with that frustrated parent, maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. Athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting with our good friend, Kaleb Stoppel, certified master athletic administrator, longtime AD in Kansas. He's just opened his heart to you and shared his experience and some pretty good suggestions. But we're going to ask him for some more tips. Kaleb, you've done this before. We're getting ready to send out a brand new AD on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put three things in their toolbox. So, what three tools are going to go into part two of Kaleb Stoppel's AD toolbox?
All right. So the first two are books, and these were books that were absolute game changers, especially these last 3 years. And honestly, looking back, I wish that somehow somebody would have put these in my new administrator, new AD toolbox, because they have nothing to do with being an AD. We have great books out there for that. And honestly, it has nothing to do with being a school leader. Okay. The first one is called Gifts of Imperfection. And it talks about let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. and it's by Brene Brown. And that, if you've never heard of Brene Brown, she is an absolute wonderful author that she will cut straight to your core of your soul and really share some hard truths, but truths that are going to lead you to a place of comfort and confidence that really allow you to be you. And honestly, what it did for me is it took the pressure off. Yeah, I'm a perfectionist at heart, and I think a lot of leaders have a tendency to go down that road if they aren't already like that in their life. But this allowed this really pointed me to a direction of the wholeheartedness and wholehearted living, and also just being okay with who you are, and not having to live up to a lot of all the expectation, because you still got to be you. So The Gift of Imperfection by Brene Brown got to be in your toolbox. The next one is going to probably take this podcast to a little bit of the PG-13, so sorry about that in advance, Jake. But the other book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, I'm going to say heck, but when you look it up, you'll find what it says. And
I've
even
read it.
though yes, even though it's a little bit different than the Brene Brown book, it is a life changer as well. And honestly, one of the other things that I wear on my wrist every day to remind me of what's important, on my bracelet, one side says live wholeheartedly, the other side says guard what you give a heck about, because that's true. And that really was the first time that it made sense in my mind what I need to be doing better, because I was giving a heck about the wrong things. And that the book is really talking about, if you only have so many hecks to give, then you better not waste them. And there's certain things in life that might be important, but you better be careful about what you're spending your energy and your time on. And that's hard for leaders to hear, because we want to give so much freely of our time, of our efforts. We're servant leaders at heart. But what do we accidentally and inadvertently sacrifice for what truly matters? People at home, ourself, when we're serving others. It's a very difficult game to play. But if you're always concentrated on making sure you prioritize what truly matters, you're not going to go wrong. So that is by far the next book you need to have in there. And there's a great journal book attached to that you can get, that actually kind of walks you through some exercises to reflect on some of those components. The third one is going to be your choice of something that you like to do in the format of, for me, it's entertainment. I love movies, but kind of in the book model, I've really enjoyed listening to spy novels on my drives to and from work. It's been my release. I don't listen to right now in this current stage of life, don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I do some of this reading. But then my guilty enjoyment is listening to some spy novels on Audible. And so my point of that in your toolbox is, don't forget to do something that allows you to just take a break. Maybe you like to play Xbox, maybe you like to golf, maybe you like to read. That's not professional. Have something in that toolbox that allows you to escape and actually take care of you by doing something you truly enjoy, because that's how you fill your cup. And yes, I know hanging out with friends, hanging out with your family, maybe even hanging around your students and your student athletes fills your cup. But I want to challenge ADs to do something selfish, take care of themselves in a selfish way, because that is one of the best ways that I think you can fill your cup.
Wow, great tools. We definitely added them to our toolbox collection, and just all three of them, relate to your passion now, which is mental health. So thanks so much for sharing with our listeners, and I think it's great that we're able to share that with new ADs as well. Kaleb, we're definitely going to get you back on the podcast, hopefully on a regular basis, to share your perspective, your thoughts. In the meantime, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain about all things about being an AD, or about maybe doing a better job with their own mental health, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Yeah. So shoot me an email. My personal email is KalebStoppel at gmail.com. or shoot me a call or a text on my cell phone. It's 785-230-3460. And additionally, I've just started kind of in my own journey feeling a little bit more confident and ready to start telling my stories in ways similar to this. But also, I've started some writing that I posted on my Facebook that's public, as well as my LinkedIn. And so, if you are someone that cruises around either of those, search my name up and give some of those pieces a read, because I think it's some stuff that might, I hope, just provide a little hope and some help to others.
Oh, absolutely. And again, appreciate you sharing those resources. Kaleb, I'll say it one more time. Thanks again for sharing with our listeners. All the best as you move forward with your journey. And we will talk about getting you back on the podcast, as I said, on a regular basis.
All right. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate you, my friend. And thanks for continuing to be a voice and a support to all ADs out there.
Oh, well, thank you for those kind words. For listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. And just a reminder, we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day. We try to share stories along with best practices. So come back and join us again on another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.